Hey, creative commuter. I hope you gave last week's episode a listen and that you tried the exercise for building your creative village. I have to say, before this podcast episode even begins, that I hosted an event in the Creative Commute Facebook group last week where some of us did this exercise together, and it was amazing. It was so much fun to do it as a group. So I highly recommend it, whether you do it alone or do it with somebody else, do the exercise because people have found it valuable. But doing it with others was really cool because it kind of drummed up ideas for what we could put on each other's lists. And two people ended up buying Play Doh. And who doesn't love an excuse to buy some Play Doh? So, if you haven't listened to last week's podcast episode, I highly recommend giving it a listen after you listen to today's episode. So, today I want to share a little story with you from an experience that I had this past weekend. So, this past Saturday, I found myself on the couch doom scrolling the morning away. Now, it was an absolutely gorgeous day. It was 85 degrees and just beautiful. In fact, my husband, before going off to brew a beer at a buddy's house, he urged me to shirk my to do list and instead go sit outside and read a book or go for a walk. But instead, I sat on the couch, just scroll, 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 occasionally reading an article, scroll, scroll, scroll. I sent a TikTok to a friend and we laughed, and then I continued to scroll, scroll, scroll. Have you ever found yourself in this exact spot? I mean, not on my couch, but on your own couch, of course. But you know that you would be better off doing something else, that you would have more fun if you went out and you did something. Joey had even urged me to go out and do something, but instead you just sit there, just scrolling your life away. What's up with that? Finally, the day was going on. It was starting to get mid-afternoon and I was I knew that I would be really mad at myself if I didn't get out and just go do something on this gorgeous day. I knew that I would feel regret if I didn't get out there. So finally, I strapped on my sneakers and I headed out to go do a solo lap at the park. I was like, I'll just go and actually just take a nice leisurely stroll. It's a beautiful day. I'm going to go and do this. Now, this is really unusual for me. Normally, when I go to the park, I'm a woman on a mission. I'm usually like in a time crunch due to my own schedule or someone else's, or I'm on a run and I'm being competitive with myself trying to beat my own time. I'm always in a hurry, always just like going out there doing my thing. I know what I want to get done and I do it. But on this day it was different. I had actually decided to take this leisurely stroll. I was on no one's timetable, and that is the only explanation that I can give for what happened on Saturday. Here's the deal. I run the same lap at this park all the time. All the time. I've trained for multiple half marathons. I've trained for 3 full marathons at this same park. I know the weekend regulars. I know where the Blue Jays hang out at this park. I know where the squirrels gather because there's this lady who feeds them nuts, even though there's obviously signs that tell her not to. I know where there is this person who has a dog that regularly leaves piles. I know exactly where all of the spots in this park are. I'm here all the time. I've run the same lap hundreds and hundreds of times. And yet, this past Saturday, I did something I'd never done before. Instead of pushing forward on my mission back to my parking spot at the end of the loop, I chose to follow my curiosity. You see, there's this spot. It's this spot it's just a little bit over a mile into my regular 3.5 mile loop. And this spot catches my eye every single time I pass it. It just it I know that it's there, and I've always had this little curiosity trigger every time I pass it. And it's a spot right before actually what my friend and I call the condescending bench. Because this bench is like a mile into your run, and it's like this got this really motivational phrase on it. And really, when you're like at mile one of a really long run, you don't really want that like motivational phrase. You're just not ready to hear it yet. And so, anyway, we've just made a joke about it. We call it the condescending bench. And actually, somebody has painted over that phrase, so I have to assume that somebody else didn't like receiving it at that point in their run either. But I digress. this spot, this spot catches my attention because it's just fascinating. It's always looked almost like there's a little path right there. Like people have been stepping off of the paved path and onto the dirt right there. But I could never imagine why anyone would want to walk off into the brush in this spot. There's nothing there but a tree line. So why is it so worn right there? I've always wondered. But again, this spot is near the very beginning of my 3.5 mile circle, and I am generally a woman on a mission. Ain't nobody got time for lollygagging around on some unknown pathway into the brush at this point in your run. Until this past Saturday. On Saturday, I did have the time. At least I perceived that I had some extra time. So instead of pressing on my loop, I decided to take a detour. I stepped off the paved road and onto this little spot of trodden dirt. And as I began to follow along, I realized more and more this was definitely a path. People were definitely walking back here. So my curiosity just like went on high alert. So I'm following this path. I'm kind of like going through, I'm like having to brush like tree limbs aside. I'm going back there, and then I saw it. I knew people had been walking back here because at the end of this little path, right before, there's actually this giant 10-foot tall chain link fence. I had no idea was back here, but it totally was. And there's a giant sign. Ooh, this giant sign read, "Turn back to the paved path. This is not a pedestrian path." Okay. Hello. Now I had to know what was going on back here. So I stepped forward until I reached this giant cautionary sign telling me to turn around. And that's when I saw it. A reindeer, a mo-fuggin' reindeer back here, just chilling right back there. All this time. Wait, there were two reindeer. There was actually a male and a female just 25 feet off the path that I've been running for years and years and years. Miles and miles. And these magical creatures have just been chilling back here all this time. My mind was blown. I stood there completely stunned, just staring at them for a few minutes before I realized that there's a giant warning sign here telling me that I'm not supposed to be here. So I hustled back to the path. But I can't stop thinking about this magical moment. How many times had I run past this spot? I will never look at this spot the same way again. Everything has changed now. Nothing, nothing is the same when I run past this spot. Now instead of rolling my eyes at this condescending bench, I will now draw strength from these magical, well, I actually don't think they're reindeer. I think they're elk. I looked up, we have a zoo nearby, and I think that's probably why they're there. And we don't have any reindeer at the zoo, but we do have elk. But I'm going to call them reindeer because they're so magical. And that's what I felt like they were in that moment. Like, that's what my mind was like, holy crap, Santa's reindeer are being hidden back here behind my path. But my point is, I took 3 minutes out of my day, a day that I spent 3 hours just scrolling on my phone that morning. And I took 3 minutes to explore this little bit of curiosity. And it has now changed my perspective of this little spot in my normal path forever. All it took was 3 minutes. And that eye opening experience, it just made me realize how fast our perspective can be transformed if we allow ourselves to explore our curiosity. So, my question to you, what's going to be your reindeer moment this week? What curiosity will you explore? What different path will you take simply to see where it goes, simply to see where it leads you? And what this experience taught me was that it doesn't have to take a ton of time for something to just open your eyes to something completely new. So I challenge you, if you're curious about something, go and explore it this week. And then I want to hear about it. So please, if you do this, reach out and let me know. Send me an email at creativecommutegen@gmail.com or share about it in the Creative Commute group on Facebook. It's facebook.com/groups/the Creative Commute. Come and share. If you have a reindeer moment this week, I want to hear about it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. It really means the world to me that you would listen. If you haven't yet and you're on iTunes, I ask that you please go and leave a review. It will help get this podcast in front of more listening ears so that we can have more wonderful creative commuters join our collective. And if you haven't yet, make sure that you've also subscribed to the podcast. It's totally free and it just alerts you every Tuesday when a new episode drops. So thank you again for listening. I hope you continue shining your magical, beautiful reindeer light out there in the world for others to see. Bye.